All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the October coaching webinar. Our topic today is, are all calories created equal? So our agenda is pretty simple. We're just going to go through some reasons and give examples of why and how calories are not created equal and why a calorie is not just a calorie. So I've already given you the answer, but don't leave just yet because we're going to do our best to let you know what you need to know to make sure the calories you are putting in your body are the best for your health. So just a little bit of a starter here. Let's talk about this statement that has been around for a long time, that a calorie is a calorie is a calorie, and that if I just cut calories, I will lose weight. So okay, if I'm fairly overweight and I decided to continue to eat the same things but just cut down on the amount, therefore cutting down on my calories, absolutely I'm going to lose weight. Sometimes counting calories is a positive first step in starting towards a healthier lifestyle, especially if you are over-consuming calorie-heavy foods. Even if you don't have that much weight to lose, yes, you will most likely lose some weight if you simply count the calories, even if you're only eating cookies and cakes and junk like that. But what is going to happen eventually is that those empty calories and lack of nutrients from healthy foods are going to negatively affect your health, causing you so many more problems than if you were to simply substitute healthier foods in the first place. And what tends to happen anyways is that healthier foods are lower in calories, or they will make you feel fuller longer and faster than those junk foods, so you end up lowering the amount of calories you are taking in the first place. Again, our goal here is to touch on a few different examples of why you need to pay attention to more than just calories, and hopefully you will understand more fully why you need to get in the quality and not just look at a number. Like a lot of our topics, this is much bigger than we're going to be able to touch on today, and we aren't going to be able to cover all of the reasons and all of the arguments for and against the calories are just calories. So again, look into things yourself, do some research, and find out more ways that you can be proactive about your own health. Let's start with the basics. Why are not all calories the same? Because they come from different sources. So what are the functions of the different types of calories? Specifically, I'm going to touch on the proteins, the fats, and the carbohydrates. First of all, fats are a source of energy. They deliver fat-soluble vitamins to the body, and they're used as building blocks for every one of our cells. But we also know that certain fats, like omega-3s, which I've mentioned in past webinars, have protective anti-inflammatory properties, while artificial fats, those trans fats specifically, have been linked to increased inflammation and heart disease. So again, difference already there in the types of calories just from one area with those fats. Protein. Protein helps keep us fuller longer. That satiety effect that we're going to touch on a little bit later. But the most important job of protein is it has to maintain and build new cells. Again, higher quality proteins are going to do a better job of that. So fish, eggs, those are a couple good sources, and the lower quality like processed hamburger and other meat that have been linked to metabolic disease and insulin resistance. So difference in the proteins there. Carbohydrates, they're kind of the trickiest of the three, with many different ways our body uses the calories from this source. It's a quick source of energy, especially for the brain, liver, and muscles. Again, better and worse sources. Higher quality carbohydrates include fiber, which helps slow digestion and can help moderate the absorption of other nutrients like sugar, so our body actually gets less of that actually absorbed, which is a very good thing, especially when it comes to the sugar. Most of the higher quality carbs are going to come from those whole foods like veggies, legumes, and then your whole grains that aren't processed. The lower quality carbohydrates strip the fiber and become those quote-unquote empty calories that we talked about that provide little nutritional value. Okay, so right here, this first slide, I hope this already kind of helps explain that a calorie isn't just a calorie, because look at this. They all have specific roles depending on where you come from, where you get them from, and even within each macronutrient, there are better and worse choices. The next part of our discussion today is why it has to do with what's called the thermic effect of food, or TEF. It was originally called the specific dynamic action, and it has also been referred to as the dietary induced thermogenesis. So if you're familiar with any of those terms, it's the same thing. All three mean the same thing. The basic definition of TEF is the energy required for digestion, absorption, transportation, metabolism, and storage of food. So what happens right after you eat something? Your metabolism goes up in order to process, digest, and metabolize the nutrients from the food you eat. Metabolism is usually at its peak a couple hours after a meal. But the amount of the metabolism change depends on what kinds of food you eat. Yep, not all foods take the same amount of energy to digest, absorb, transport, metabolize, and store. Again, point number 2 of why calories are not created equal. Let's get a little more specific here. When you eat protein, you burn approximately 20 to 30% of the calories in that meal just to digest it. With carbohydrates, it's around 5 to 15%. With fat, it's about 5%. The metabolic pathways for protein are actually less efficient than carbs and fats, making the body work harder to process, which is a good thing because then your body ends up storing less of it and using more energy from it to digest it. Let me give you an example. If you eat 100 calories of protein, you actually only end up with about 75 calories left over after processing. Carbohydrates end up with about 90 calories. Fats end up with about 95 out of those original 100 calories. Now, as we've said in the past, we need carbohydrates, we need good healthy fat, but when we eat a more protein-based diet, we're not storing as much of those meals. And it's not only because of the fact that you burn more calories when you eat that healthier food than, say, for example, a soda. It's the fact that you're feeding your body the right nutrients. Those leftover calories that you end up with from an egg are going to be used differently than that of a Twinkie, for example. You're not only going to end up with less calories in general, but the calories you are left over with, your body's going to be able to use a lot better. It's going to use, for example, that egg for all sorts of body processes. That Twinkie is basically just going to be broken down into sugar, and a lot of it when it comes to Twinkies, and your body doesn't need it that much. So what does it do? Yep, stores it right on that muffin top. So when you think that you're drinking 100 calories of soda is the same as 100 calories of broccoli or chicken, you might want to think again about that. Let's jump back to that fat percentage for just a second. Like I said, it has the lowest thermic effect of all the macronutrients, but I want to make clear that we don't want to avoid fats. And again, you've heard us say this before. We need good quality fats in our diet. Olive oil, coconut oil, nuts, avocados, salmon, tuna, just a few of those good sources of fat. Eggs. These foods can have a higher calorie content than other foods sometimes. And then with the thermic effect ranking the lowest, I can just feel some of you thinking, well, no way, I'm going to avoid those too. But again, going back to a calorie is not just a calorie. The benefit you get from eating those good healthy fats in proper portion size, mind you, is still going to give you a greater health benefit than grabbing a 100-calorie pack of Ritz crackers, for example. In a bit, I'm going to touch on the fact that healthy foods help keep you fuller longer as well, which is huge when we're talking about which types of calories you want to eat to avoid. So that's coming up. But first, I want to give you an example of a study that was done comparing different foods and how they're broken down. Specifically, this study wanted to show the difference between more and less processed foods and how they differ when it comes to that thermic effect. So this specific study compared cheese sandwiches. The first group ate a multi-grain bread sandwich with real cheddar cheese, minimally processed. The second group ate a sandwich made with white bread and completely processed cheese. As you can see in the diagram, the calories are exactly the same in both meals, but they vary when it comes to macronutrients. So the whole food meal has more fat, less carbohydrates, more fiber, about the same amount of sugar, and more protein. And just as a side note, I don't really believe that the whole food option is a really great option, but again, the fact is it's still showing that being mindful of the processed ingredients in foods does make a difference as well with those calories. Even if it seems to be the exact same meal, like a cheese sandwich, you probably wouldn't know or really be able to tell the difference between the different cheeses. The breads you might, but probably not the cheese. Now, I wouldn't be showing you this study if the results didn't support what I'm trying to get across to you, so you can guess what the difference of the thermic effect of the two sandwiches were. Yep, eating the sandwich that had the same amount of calories but had more fiber, more protein, less extra ingredients, caused that thermic effect to be much higher. And it actually took about 46.8% more energy on average to digest the first sandwich than the second one. That's almost half or almost double. So it's pretty simple. You will burn more calories simply by digesting more whole foods, which results in less net calories in the end. Again, don't take this as me giving you permission to go out and eat a bunch of cheese sandwiches, but please take this as another reason that it's not just about calories, it's about the content. And you're going to hear me say that a couple more times. Next up, I'm going to talk about sugar. So if you're a regular listener, you know that we're pretty strict on sugar and believe you should limit the amount of sugar and carbs on a daily basis. But I want to dive in a little bit further into why you should be making the sugar you do eat the best for your body, because there are different types of sugars most of you are probably aware. I'm going to compare fructose and glucose today. Here's the deal. Both fructose and glucose are simple sugars, so they fall under the category of eat as little of me as possible. But there is a difference between them. Glucose can be metabolized and used by all of the body's tissues, but fructose can only be metabolized in any significant amount by the liver. So when we eat too much fructose, our liver is basically running full-time on metabolizing fructose and not doing all of its other jobs that it needs to do. Also, fructose may lead to a higher ghrelin level than glucose. For those unfamiliar with ghrelin, it's an enzyme produced by the stomach lining that stimulates appetite. So do we want more of the stuff that will keep making us hungry? I certainly don't. Along those same lines, fructose does not stimulate the satiety centers in the brain the same way as glucose. So when you eat fructose, your gut isn't communicating to your brain, hey, we're good down here, we've got enough to eat. So your brain doesn't think it's full yet and continues to tell you to eat more. You don't feel that satiety or that feeling of fullness as much. Now, I'm not saying that glucose is the greatest at making you feel full, because there are much better foods out there for that. All I'm saying is that it does a better job than fructose. So the calories from fructose are not the same as the calories from glucose. The last difference is if you compare the same number of calories from fructose and glucose, fructose is going to cause more issues with insulin resistance, abdominal fat gain, increased triglycerides, and increased blood sugar than glucose. Again, glucose is going to do the same thing, but fructose is going to do it bigger and badder. Sugar also affects our cholesterol, which many people don't really know or don't fully understand. They think it simply affects blood sugar, things like that. But what sugar does, and specifically what fructose does at a higher rate, is turn our LDL cholesterol into small, dense particles. LDL is our bad cholesterol. It's what we want to limit. But there are actually two types of LDL cholesterol. We've got the nice big particles and the smaller, dense particles. The big particles aren't too bad, actually, but those smaller particles get into the cracks and crevices of our arteries and cause blockages. So again, glucose does this too, but fructose is going to be worse for you. Now here's the big part that I want you to remember. The fructose that I am talking about with regard to this conversation about having more negative effects on your body than glucose is the fructose from added sugars, not from fruit. Because the sugar in fruits are half glucose and half fructose. Fruits, though, have fiber, water, and you chew them, all which mitigate the negative effects of that fructose in them. Not fruit juice. I'm talking about whole fruit, whole fruit. Even if the fruit juice says it doesn't have added sugar in it, it still takes away some of those other factors, like the fiber and the fact that you chew, and then that fructose becomes similar to that in processed sugary foods. So what foods have fructose in them? Well, anything that says high fructose corn syrup on the label. Companies have become increasingly aware that consumers are onto the fact that high fructose corn syrup is bad for you, and now all of you know more reasons why this is absolutely true. So you may not see as many products with this ingredient, which is great, but be aware that it's still out there in things like juices, sodas, fast food even, and then just read labels. That's the first step. Even if the label doesn't say specifically high fructose corn syrup, added sugar, high sugar content in processed foods have that bad fructose in them, more than not. Most of the time, I can almost say 99% of the time. Cereals, energy drinks, juices, sodas, pastries, ice cream, canned fruit, jellies and jams, salad dressing, sauces like ketchup, orange sauce, sweet and sour sauce, basically anything that has sugar on the nutritional data that isn't a food that you just picked from a tree or a bush is something to take a second look at. So moving on, like I said, we're going to come back to this along the same lines with our earlier discussion of that thermic effect, and something we have touched on a bit already. Another way that a calorie isn't just a calorie is that satiety effect. Satiety, again, is that feeling of being full. A bit more specifically, it can be the ability of foods to reduce hunger, increase feelings of fullness, and reduce energy intake for the next few hours. So basically, certain foods are going to keep you fuller than others. So why is that good? Well, we're not going to eat as much, right? That's how it works out. And also, it's a lot harder to overeat the same amount of calories from some foods than others. A good example of this is to think about 500 calories of ice cream. How much is that? Depending on the kind, maybe a cup, maybe two, maybe a little more, but it's not more than that typically for 500 calories. Now think about broccoli. There's about 30 calories in a chopped cup, so to get 500 calories, that's a lot of broccoli. That's almost 17 cups. So if I eat a cup or two of ice cream versus 17 cups of broccoli, which one do you think is going to keep me fuller longer? This goes back to the content of foods. Foods that have more fiber, protein, and water content typically are higher on that satiety factor than foods with the carbohydrates and a little maybe more of the fats even. Some fats help keep us fuller longer, some don't. While we can't rely on the feelings of fullness alone for those eating habits, it's just another factor that's going to help you choose those foods. They're going to help you curb your appetite. It's going to help you eat less in general, and it's going to give you more nutrients for the calorie content. So when we talk about how foods make us feel fuller, that also leads into this discussion of nutrient density. I touched on this just a bit in my intro when I talked about those empty calories, so let's get into it a little more now. When I say nutrient-dense foods, it means foods that contain a high level of nutrients like vitamins, minerals, and then our proteins, carbohydrates, and fat, but that have relatively few calories. So in this case, a calorie isn't a calorie because it contains extremely important nutrients for our health, because some of them do. These foods have very few empty calories, if you will, or those calories that provide very little to no healthful nutrients. So I could eat a graham cracker that will simply turn into sugar in my body, or I could eat a tomato and reap the benefits of all the nutrients that will help my body function at its peak. Like I said at the beginning, if we don't eat foods that have nutrients in them, we put our body at risk for all sorts of issues. I don't have time to go into the symptoms for being deficient in each vitamin and mineral, but know that eating only processed foods that have been stripped of most of their nutrients is going to make you deficient in a lot of things. Some of the symptoms are as simple as feeling tired, feeling fatigued. So you may just think, oh, I'm too busy, I'm not getting enough sleep, but it could just be that you're not eating the right foods as well. So how do I know what foods are nutrient dense and which are not? Well, first off, if it's a whole food and not from a box, there's a pretty good chance that it's good and nutrient dense. But if you're one that likes charts and fun things like that, a scale to look at is called the Aggregate Nutrient Density Index, or ANDI, which was created by Dr. Joel Fuhrman, who is a physician who specializes in preventing and reversing disease through nutritional and natural methods. He created the ANDI guide as a way to help people tell which foods are going to be the most nutrient dense and therefore the healthiest overall. It's scored from 0 to 1,000, 1,000 being the best. The scores are calculated by evaluating a range of micronutrients like vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, and antioxidant capabilities, which help fight those free radicals that can damage our DNA and cause things like cancer and heart disease. And in case you're wondering, just a little tidbit on phytochemicals, these are compounds produced by plants that have various benefits for the body. Some of you are familiar or have heard of beta-carotene before, which is in things like carrots and broccoli, and that helps with our immune system, our vision, our skin, and bone health. Lycopene is another example of a phytochemical that helps in cancer prevention, and it's in tomatoes, red peppers, watermelon, things like that. It's estimated that there could be over 4,000 phytochemicals, but only a fraction have been studied, so it's still an emerging field. So anyways, back to the ANDI. What foods are at the top? Well, it should come as no surprise if you've watched our webinars before that it's going to be those green leafy veggies that have the most nutrient density. Kale, collard greens, mustard greens, and watercress all got the top score of 1,000. Again, those are all green leafy veggies. The lowest score, soda with a 1. So now a couple of notes before, if you look at this scale, and don't come back to me saying, hey, you always told me to eat almonds, and they only got a 28 on the score. Keep in mind that this specific scale ranks based on the number of different beneficial nutrients. So while kale has a bunch of different positive, a bunch of different things going on with it, almonds, they're super beneficial, but they just don't have the same number of different nutrients. So it doesn't mean they're not healthy. So it's not a perfect scale, but again, it's just to use in the sense that I'm trying to get you to understand that it's not about the calories. Say it with me, it's about the content. All right. I know top 10, top 5 lists are all the rage right now, so I'm going to kind of give you a top list of some different food, best bang for your buck, if you will, as far as nutrient density. So, and I'm going to vary it up so it's not all of those veggies. First one is salmon. Salmon is one of the best meats you can eat. It's got omega-3s, magnesium, potassium, selenium, and all the B vitamins. Wild-caught salmon has a better omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, which we talked on at the last webinar. So if you aren't familiar or if you haven't looked at that webinar, go back and check it out. We want those omega-3s and omega-6 ratios to be closer than farther apart. Next one, kale, which I'm sure you are all sick about hearing about, but there's a reason that it's called a superfood. 100 grams has about 200% of our recommended vitamin C levels, 300% of vitamin A, 1,000% of vitamin K recommended levels. It's got large amounts of vitamin B6, potassium, calcium, magnesium, copper, and manganese. It also sneaks in 2 grams of fiber, 3 grams of protein, and that's in only 50 calories. Compare that to one of those 100-calorie snack packs, and the difference in what a calorie means is kind of laughable, to be honest with you. Okay, next one. This one is to put on that sounds gross but is super healthy list, is seaweed. It is very, very healthy. It's high in calcium, iron, magnesium, and manganese, and also has a ton of antioxidants. The best part of seaweed is actually its iodine content, which is a mineral that's used to make thyroid hormones. As many of you are aware or deal with in your own lives, thyroid function is essential to help with weight management along with other things, but a lot of people think, my thyroid's messed up, I'm gaining weight. This is a big thing to help with that, to produce that iodine that helps with the thyroid. So even eating seaweed, an example is kelp. Even eating it a few times a month can give you the iodine levels you need. So go grab some sushi that's wrapped in the seaweed. There's also supplements out there if you are looking to add specifically kelp to your diet or don't know any good recipes. You can check with your doctor for more info on dried kelp supplements because there's a lot out there right now. Let's do a spice next. Garlic is going to be a huge, huge beneficial spice for you. It has some amazing nutrients, vitamin C, B1 and B6, calcium, potassium, copper, manganese, and selenium. It also has what is called allicin in it, which has been shown in some studies to lower blood pressure and LDL cholesterol and raise that healthy HDL cholesterol. All things we want to see in our next screening results, right? How about another one that you may not have thought of as nutrient dense? Shellfish. Clams and oysters are the most typical shellfish we see in restaurants. Clams have 16 times the amount of vitamin B12 that is recommended and also have vitamin C, B vitamins, potassium, selenium, and iron. Oysters have 6 times the recommended daily amount you need for zinc, 2 times the recommended daily amount for copper, along with large amounts of B12 and vitamin D, among others. Next up, how about a food that you've probably heard us tell you to eat less of in past webinars? Potatoes are one of those foods that we tell you to watch the amounts of because they're super starchy. But here you go. They're also very nutritious. So you can absolutely include them in your rotation, just not every meal every day. Potatoes have lots of potassium, magnesium, iron, copper, manganese, vitamin C, most of the B vitamins. They also have a big satiety value, which kind of, again, goes against what I've been telling you about the foods that keep you fuller longer. But hey, there's exceptions to everything. Now again, you can't throw a bunch of sour cream on there, you can't throw a bunch of butter. This is potatoes' natural state. Butter, actually, if you do the grass-fed butter, that might actually be pretty good for you. So something to think about there. A little cooking trick to actually make the starchiness of the potatoes work in your favor, and again, this is a new kind of emerging field. If you cook the potatoes but then don't eat them right away, you let them cool and then you eat them cold. What? Okay. So when you cook potatoes and let them cool, it forms what's called resistant starch, which is actually a lot like fiber in our bodies, so it turns into something very beneficial. Many studies are showing that resistant starches can have many health benefits like improved insulin sensitivity for you diabetics, lowered blood sugar levels, reduced appetite, and digestive benefits, just like fiber, normal fiber would, digestive benefits, right? But the key is the way they're prepared. You have to cook them and then let them cool. You can't heat them up again or that change is negated. It goes back to regular starch. I would expect to hear a lot more about resistant starches in the future if you haven't already, and we might even do a webinar coming up that has partially some stuff to do with that resistant starch, because it's pretty cool when you look into it. Let's get a fruit in here. Blueberries are insanely nutritious when it comes to the fruit arena. They aren't as high in vitamins and minerals as our veggies, but the antioxidants are the main reason for their value. They have those phytochemicals I mentioned earlier and other antioxidants that are so beneficial to us. Some studies have found benefits like improved memory in older adults, helping that blood pressure and LDL go down in people with metabolic syndrome, and possibly some cancer-fighting properties. All right, last two here for you. Whole eggs are super nutritious, but have been given a bad rap in the past because of their cholesterol content. But we have found that dietary cholesterol does not raise that LDL cholesterol in your blood, so don't be afraid to add the yellow. The yolks are the nutritious part of the egg. It contains things like lutein and other antioxidants that can protect your eyes, choline, which is a brain nutrient that 90% of people are not getting enough of, among so many other vitamins and minerals that I'm not going to list here at this point. They also have high quality protein, healthy fats, and they're cheap. Eggs are super cheap and they're easy to prepare. Try for pastured and cage-free eggs if you can. You're just going to get a bigger quantity of those good nutrients, because what the chicken eats goes into their eggs. So if the chicken's out being able to eat its normal diet, you're going to get more nutritious eggs. Okay, sweet toothers out there, let's talk about how chocolate is one of those good calories. Okay, now don't go out and steal all your kids' Halloween candy in a couple weeks, but do reach for that dark chocolate. It's loaded with fiber, iron, magnesium, copper, and manganese. The biggest plus with dark chocolate is those antioxidants. It actually tested higher than blueberries and acai berries in antioxidants in a study that was done. The studies also point to improved blood flow, lower blood pressure, reduced cholesterol, and improved brain function in people that eat dark chocolate on a regular basis. But again, you have to make sure that you're choosing the right kind of chocolate. It has to be dark, and it has to be real dark chocolate, which means that it needs to have at least 70% cocoa content. 85% is going to be even healthier and have more of these health-enhancing ingredients. So again, you can have dark chocolate, but some of that Hershey's dark chocolate isn't going to be the right cocoa content, so you're not going to get these same benefits. It's going to be more like eating the regular chocolate, which is basically empty calories. And then again, stick to those serving sizes. No eating 8 entire squares of dark chocolate every day. Again, that's going to negate those positive things. By the way, if you want to look more in depth into what the benefits of some of the vitamins and minerals I'm mentioning, take a look at our webinar earlier this year from March that's archived on our blog, the healthcheck360blog.com. So there you go. That's it. I hope when you hear someone say, oh, it's all about calories in versus calories out, a calorie is just a calorie, you can use some of the info we talked about today to give them a great dose of knowledge for that day. As always, please contact us with any questions from the webinars, ideas for future webinars. We're always looking for feedback. Visit the website at myhealthcheck360.com. You can email us. You can rewatch the webinars on our blog, like I just mentioned. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook for recipes. And we even have chances to win prizes every once in a while on our Facebook. So go ahead and take a look at that. And you can always give us a call. I put the upcoming webinar topics on here. Next month is going to be Sugar 101. We'll tell you everything you need to know about sugar and the effects it has on your body. And then December, the benefits of unplugging, why you should put down that technology. Thank you again, everyone. Have a wonderful day.